I am very excited to be here with you all today. But outside of these amazing conferences and great networking and fantastic entertainment, my roots actually bring me back to a very different place. I grew up in a small town affectionately known as the carbon capital of the world. Intrigued? Well, to be fair, we also touted a few other titles, including having North America's smallest chapel and the world's second largest fiberglass cow. Now, coming home for summer during my college days, I had to find a job. Right? What do you do when you live in the carbon capital of the world? Of course, you choose one of the 5 carbon graphite manufacturing plants to work at. And that's exactly what I did. I went out and purchased my required steel-toed boots, and I joined the outside maintenance crew that operated first shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, I learned a lot of things over those 2 summers. The importance of hard work, manual labor, getting your hands dirty, union dues, those were fun for a college student, and how great it actually feels to wipe that carbon dust off of your body at the end of the day. Now, while I learned a lot of things, there were actually a lot of things I didn't learn back then, things I didn't appreciate at the time. I didn't learn, nor did I appreciate the role I was actually playing in the global economy. And I didn't learn, nor did I appreciate the role I was playing in the global supply chain. I was actually helping to manufacture products that were powering so many different industries, from food and beverage to automotive to oil and gas to aerospace to agriculture to mining. Now, while I didn't ultimately select an ongoing career in carbon graphite, I did select one in supply chain. And lucky for me, we are filled with headlines associated with supply chain over the past few years. From the blockage of the Suez Canal, to trucker protests, to semiconductor chip shortages, and heat waves driving droughts, we're not short of supply chain disruptions. And these are just the headlines. Statistics show that in 2021, there were actually 11,642 supply chain disruptions. Now, out of all of these challenges and disruptions that we face, I gotta say, maybe a few good things actually have come out of this. I've been in supply chain my entire career, and this is the first time in my career I don't have to explain what I do anymore. People get it, right? Everyone talks supply chain now, even at the dinner table. Now, you know you've really made it in your profession, however, when you have your own Halloween costumes. Just like the doctors and the firefighters and the police officers, Logistics Now will operate our own Halloween costumes as well. So, what do we do? A lot of these challenges that we face are not just always big black swan events. They're systemic in nature. We're experiencing so many different changes that will ongoingly impact our supply chains. Of course, we can talk about the climate issues. We can talk about labor, the shortage of labor, or the inability to maybe retain labor. We can talk about the geopolitical issues that are causing us to have imbalances of supply and demand. Of course, we can talk about our energy opportunities. We can talk about healthcare and rising material costs. Then we can talk about all of us fickle consumers that want to change on a whim what we want, when we want it, how we want it. How do we deal with all of this? How do we figure out how to be resilient in our supply chains amidst a myriad of ongoing disruptions and challenges and uncertainties? Data. Data is a key underpinning, a key piece of fuel to help drive smarter, more proactive, more intelligent supply chain decisions. And when we think about data, there's multiple segments to consider. We can look at private data that you own within your own organization. But we all know supply chains are inherently interconnected. We're part of a large network, a large ecosystem. We have to consider to collaborate and share data and insights across our own communities, our customers, our suppliers, our logistics providers. Then there's also public data. All of these pieces of information and insight that are floating around that could help us tie back into making supply chain decisions. This is what's going to allow us to achieve the visibility, the flexibility, the resilience, and the innovation that we need in our supply chains of today and in our supply chains of tomorrow. So let's look at these challenges through the lens of several energy-related supply chains. From a grid utility perspective, we need to consider the potential logistical challenges of procuring materials to complete grid projects, and do that amidst potential supplier shortages. From an electric utilities perspective, we can talk about forecasting demand and ensuring adequate supply. And in some situations, shaping that demand when demand and supply are indeed imbalanced. And for generation companies, we can talk about forecasting the adequacy of the supply of fuel in order to deliver on obligations into the electricity markets. But rather than go into all the details of all of those sub-verticals supply chains, sometimes it's actually a very good thing to think outside your own industry. And that's what I'd like you to do here. I'd like you to turn in your company ID badge, relinquish your industry, your title, your role, and simply wear the hat of a consumer. And let's talk about pants. Khaki pants, to be specific. Okay? Now, imagine you're in the market for a new pair of khakis. What does it actually take for those khakis to arrive at your doorstep? And if, as a consumer, you were to turn that label over from a sustainability perspective, what would you actually see? There are a ton of steps in our supply chains that need to operate to effectively deliver that pair of khakis to your doorstep. From predicting the demand up front to ensuring quality product is being manufactured through distribution and into that final mile, there are a myriad of opportunities to inject digital technologies into the supply chain to ensure optimal customer satisfaction, as well as ensuring that it's done sustainably. So let's look at each of these in just a little bit more detail, starting with that first point about predicting demand. How do we know that you're going to even order those khakis? In what color? In what style? What size? It all begins with a forecast. And so many other things are calculated off of that forecast. So it's important to get that first number right, or as right as possible, because so much depends upon it. The level of inventory imbalances costs a lot of money and a lot of opportunity. Getting it right is important. There are digital technologies out there that can inject artificial intelligence and machine learning to accurately predict what that demand is going to be. And in our case of khakis, it's thinking not just about past historical sales, promotions, competitor insights, but it is also looking at what we can glean from potential future. That could be back-to-school information. It could be weather. It could be some social media influencer that talks about a pair of khakis and everyone goes out to buy them. Injecting machine learning into the demand forecasting process is step number one. Now let's move upstream into a manufacturing process. 80% of returns actually happen because of damages. Think about the waste involved with that, not just from a product perspective, but of course from the returns process of pushing that material back upstream. We can inject artificial intelligence into a visual inspection process to allow us to capture those issues before they even leave the manufacturing facility. A stain, a rip, a tear, a pull, a broken button, a misplaced zipper. We have a great opportunity to be able to identify those before they even leave the facility. Okay. So we have a great pair of khakis. Those khakis are sitting in a distribution center somewhere. Somebody needs to pick that order. Picking errors costs money and, of course, is a drain on profitability. Picture a warehouse worker wearing a pair of glasses that guides them to what order to pick, bringing that number of errors down while also ensuring their safety because their hands are free during the picking process. Okay, so we have an order picked. Let's now go downstream into transportation and logistics. We are not short of documents in the transportation and logistics space. Bills of lading, invoices, packing slips, you name it. And if you look further upstream, for every shipment by sea, 36 original documents, 240 copies, and as many as 27 different parties leaving a paper trail. We can do better. By injecting artificial intelligence into a documentation process, we can take the unstructured data of that document, turn it into structured data, eliminate duplicate efforts, eliminate waste. Those khakis are now sitting on a truck and they're ready to be delivered to your doorstep. Of course, with the rise of e-commerce comes many other things. Right? The rise of those e-commerce orders drives a rise in the number of trucks on the roads to deliver those orders, which drives a number of increase into the kilometers driven, which of course translates into the number of emissions we have in our environment. Another great area to inject digital innovation in supply chains to optimize what those last mile routes need to be. Taking into account number of trucks, number of drivers, pickup and delivery commitments, ensuring that the routes that are being driven are the most optimal to deliver with a customer satisfaction level, but in the most sustainable way possible as well. So from the forecasting side down to that last mile delivery and everything in between, we can ensure that what we do deliver is sustainable, so that when you do receive that nice pair of khakis, you're not only just stylish and sporty, but you are sustainable as well. We can always look outside our own industries to identify areas of opportunity. Innovations in supply chains are happening everywhere. If you want to talk about optimizing the manufacturing process, look to AB InBev. If you want to optimize logistics and last mile delivery, look to UPS, look to Loblaws. If you want to talk about inventory visibility across a complex network, look to Renault. If you want to talk about strategic procurement practices in a sustainable way, look to Unilever. And if you want to focus in on demand forecasting to ensure you are reducing waste, look to Carrefour. There are many opportunities to look across different supply chains to gather ideas. Now, we can talk about all of these digital technologies in areas of innovation in supply chain. But on the same capacity, we have to think about our teams. How do we get them into the mindset to do these types of innovations? Be sure to always focus on the user. Obsess about the user. What are you building? Who are you building it for? What are their goals? What are their KPIs? Always revolve around a user. Think 10x. All too often, we always think about how do we do 10% better, right? How do we get that next percentage point better? The biggest ideas in innovation are going to come from thinking 10x. And give your teams the freedom to innovate. Empower them to innovate. Celebrate the successes, but just as importantly, celebrate the failures. Right? Those are all learnings that can go back into everything else that's going to come downstream. We talk about disruptions, we talk about disruptors. And frankly, in the world of supply chain, we have a ton of them, and it's going to continue to grow. So if I could leave you with just 3 things to consider as you take off that new ID badge I gave you and put yours back on. Couple of considerations. Data and technology can absolutely drive innovations in supply chains. Identify the data, learn about the technologies, and seek out areas of opportunity in your supply chains across your extended networks to inject areas of innovation. Look outside your own industry for inspiration. Supply chains, while very complex, also have an awful lot of commonalities. Everybody has to forecast. Everybody has to think about supply. Everybody has to think about risks. Be sure to look outside your own industry to gather levels of insight and inspiration. And everyone needs pants. Or everyone wants pants. But regardless of what product you offer or what service you deliver, it is our opportunity, and it is our obligation to ensure that what we are delivering is helping to deliver a sustainable supply chain for everyone. Thank you so much for your time.